Welcome to the Bluegrass Recap. Yeah, it's not Friday, is it? There was a lot going on, and I thought, well, I'm going to wait until Sunday, because I've been following the whole Patriot Act renewal, that kind of thing, see what's going to happen with that. Yeah, so I was taking notes, because I don't want to get too off track and ramble too much, and, well, yeah, I'm not going to read all this shit, I promise. But I think first things I want to touch on this week, and it's a good thing, is Ernie Chambers of Omaha, state legislator for Nebraska. I believe it was Nebraska. God, I hope I got that right. He's been a long-time senator in that state, if you're not familiar with Ernie Chambers. He's infamous for his casual wear, I guess we could say. He always wears a t-shirt and jeans. Oh, gosh. He's a character. What can I say? He's a man that does take his job very seriously. I wish someone like him was in Kentucky. I'm jealous of you, Nebraska. I'm very jealous of you. I get to deal with senators like Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul, who are stealing headlines. I was going to do local news, but our two state dumbasses managed to somehow connect local news and national news, because they're geniuses. But back to the good guy, Ernie Chambers. In case you didn't know, he's been with the state legislature of Nebraska, state senator, since 1976. 70s, okay? He's been in there for a minute. And I don't normally support people that have been in an office for that damn long. I can't stand it. I still think we need to have some type of term limits on senators. I don't think they should be able to be voted in for life, basically. Chambers, I'd make an exception for. I really would. He tries to get things done. I know I first heard about Mr. Chambers when he sued God in his state court. Yeah, he sued God because he was sick of frivolous lawsuits, and so he decided he'd give a great example of a frivolous lawsuit. And as I recall, I think he lost it, or maybe I don't remember. Maybe they threw that one out. I'll have to read back on that one. I plan to kind of write an article about this. That way I don't make this whole video take long. But in this week's recap, great, fantastic news. He managed to get Nebraska to repeal their death penalty. And not just repeal it, override the governor's veto of said appeal. Mr. Chambers has been working on this since at least 1979. Every year, without fail, he has put forward legislation to end the death penalty in Nebraska. He's been trying to end this since the Supreme Court took off the moratorium on legislating the death penalty to begin with. So he has, without fail, constantly tried. In fact, he successfully, I don't think he repealed it, but essentially he did. He made it to where he had it approved back in 1979, actually. He managed to get a 30-year sentence instead of the death penalty, and the governor at the time vetoed that. And from what I understand, there wasn't enough of a majority to even put it to a repeal vote for his party to do so. So he had that. Then he tried to get a 2-year moratorium on the death penalty back in, I want to say it's 2008, maybe. It wasn't too long ago. Or no, it was 1999, I think. And that ended up being vetoed as well. Because they figured, well, if we can put a hold on it for 2 years, maybe we can kind of analyze the situation here, take a step back, breathe, just chill and let that shit go, homie, kind of thing. And the governor wouldn't have it. So this time around was really fantastic news. Now, it gets a little complicated, though. This law does not take effect, this repealment, for 3 months, 90 days. There are currently 10 inmates on death row. And Governor Ricketts, I think is how you pronounce his last name, the current governor, who probably would describe Chambers as a pain in his proverbial ass at this point, has made it clear he is not going to halt those executions. He's still bringing in the lethal injection drugs to take these guys out, because he questions whether the law has the constitutional right to alter already sentenced inmates. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works out. And part of me wants to say this is some butthurt seriously flowing through the governor of Nebraska, simply because I was reading this story on the Times, because I was trying to find out why Ricketts was vetoing this if he had that much of a majority saying, yeah, let's do this, let's completely repeal this shit. If I'm a governor and there's that much of a majority saying let's get rid of this, I think I would lend a little more credit. But instead, Ricketts was like holding personal meetings with these senators to try and get them to flip their repealment votes before they had the vote. He went on there and he was fear-mongering. He really was. He was saying that it's a matter of public safety, and because it is a matter of making sure the public prosecutors have the tools they need to put these dangerous, hardened criminals behind bars. I think any genius, you don't even have to be a genius. What does lethal injection have to do with putting criminals behind bars? Nothing. Zero. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. Lethal injection is not a tool to convict anybody. And you can still keep people behind bars indefinitely, as we all know. You don't need a death penalty to do so. I think the state legislators recognize that fact too, and they're not having it. They're not listening. Additionally, Ricketts tried to play off these 10 inmates' lives as no big deal. No big deal whatsoever. I've got a quote on that too. We have 10 inmates on death row. We don't have hundreds. He doesn't seem to understand that when it comes to the death penalty in the United States, the number of people on death row has nothing to do with the discussion of the purpose of the death penalty. I don't care if it's one person or 1,000. That's not the question of how many people will be killed. It's whether it's the right thing to do. He's not quite getting the discussion here, and I think that might be why he's upset that they vetoed his veto, which is a really cool feature of government. I really like that. I actually use that feature a lot in Magic the Gathering, but that's just in nerd humor, and I'll leave that alone. But essentially, I have a problem with the death penalty, not because we're killing people, but more so because of how we're using the death penalty, how we're applying it. We're using our terms of justice as vengeance, as a form of restitution. And that is not the death penalty. All you get out of the death penalty is a corpse. And if it's because somebody, God forbid, would come along and kill my child, yeah, I'm going to be angry. As a mom, I'm going to want that person's balls dipped in bronze and put his knockers on my door. Guilty? I'm human. I would feel that way. But ultimately, you just get two corpses out of it. The one who died, if that's usually what they convict people with the death penalty for, and then the criminal. It's not really justice, and it's not really compensation in my book. It really is not. It's very tough thing to talk about. But I don't want to go into a long spiel in this video because this is a recap. But I have a problem with the whole eye for an eye, life for a life thing. I just don't agree with that concept at all. You can take somebody's life without killing them. I think we all know that. How you could read Alexander Dumas's Count of Monte Cristo. It doesn't take much to take somebody's life at all. And you didn't have to kill them to do it. There's plenty of ways to find this quote-unquote justice. I think a lot of states that support executions, their idea of justice is trying to treat everybody the same, and I just don't agree with taking a person's life and using it as a commodity in the payback part of the process. I don't think a person's life is necessarily a form of payment. Not on that level, not snuffing them out like that. I just can't agree with it. Like I said, really the only thing you're going to get is a corpse. You're still not going to get that closure of what you lost. A corpse does not replace the loss of a loved one. It never will. But that's my 2 cents. Okay, so I was going to cover local news here in Kentucky, and then some national news. Usually it's something federal. But like I said, my two state dumbasses covered that for me. They made my job so easy tonight. I was like, oh, thank you guys, and hate them all at the same time. And of course, I'm talking about Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul. I don't know how many of you keep track of the Patriot Act. It was a very important vote tonight. Rand Paul has, I got to give him credit. He is consistent about his desire for the Patriot Act to go away. He's very intolerant of, data collection and whatnot. I even have ethical questions about it, but at the same time, we have to find something. This whole society thing of, well, we can be our own individual people. At some point, you have to have at least some group organization of what other people are doing to some level, not a lot, but just enough that if you get wind of something bad that's going to happen, you can act on it. So I kind of get the importance of this legislation, though I do think the Patriot Act overreaches quite a bit. But anyway, Rand Paul, earlier this week, had literally done, I think it was like 11 hours of filibuster on the Senate floor. Just, this isn't what we give up. This is what we fought a revolution for, I think is what he said. Are we going to so blithely give up freedom? He sounds like he's on his campaign stumping, which we already know he's running for president. So I'm not surprised he's kind of, sort of, probably taking advantage of the limelight and getting attention, because he does need to ramp up the Kentucky Tea Party a bit more, because there's lots of options out there, and he wants to put himself out and above. And he's definitely going to be their darling this week, because he's doing the whole fuck the government kind of thing, And it's ironic because, of course, McConnell's on the other side of the coin. He's your typical big Republican that likes big business, big security, big defense. He's all for renewing the Patriot Act. So this looks really bad. I was watching an interview on MSNBC. I forget what the name of the show was, but Senator Amy Klobuchar, I think is how you pronounce it. She's a Democrat, of course, from Minnesota. She literally described this, and I quote, "It's like watching a two-man Kentucky Derby." And that's very true. You have these two senators from the same state on very opposite ideological sides of a coin, but they're both Republican. And it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I really kind of lean towards Paul taking advantage of the opportunity, because he is stumping right now for president, and he has had some super PAC ads run already. And I'm sure I deliver mail. I see the campaign ads. Patriot Act has been on some of his campaign ads that have come out here in Kentucky. So I know he is using this as a soapbox. He's going to be like, and see, I was in the Senate, and I said no to the Patriot Act and your privacy and blah, 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 blah. Because you know how they love to take advantage of these situations. And I guess that's the ideological schism we kind of have in Kentucky. Ohio is not as bad. It's really weird down here in Kentucky. I don't know. I don't see Rand Paul still doing very well running for president. There will never be a President Paul. Just sounds wrong, doesn't it? Senator, now President Paul. No. I'm just kidding. I don't vote on people based on their name, but I do think about what it would sound like. But, I'm just weird like that. But I think the biggest crux of the problem, and it's the biggest one that I only hear Paul really talk about with the Patriot Act, is the collection of the telecommunications data. Now, they had a compromise bill, I think is what they're calling it, called the USA Freedom Act of 2014. This is supported by pretty much both parties. Pretty bipartisan legislature. And it's actually not too bad, because they're putting more restrictions on the collection of this data. You have to go before the FISA courts, you have to get warrants, you have to prove you have reason to, check all this stuff, yada yada. I mean, it's not a bad thing. At least they're trying to adjust and improve the act itself. And really, the only thing I'm hearing Paul scream about is the whole monitoring telephone calls thing.
So essentially, I think the biggest problem with the Patriot Act for Rand Paul, and I think he's misplacing it, or at least he's kind of, how can I put it? He's playing on the American public, I guess one could say, and their fears and their worries, and essentially he's giving the idea that your Dear Aunt Martha's baked bean recipe is under threat of being investigated, the secret being cataloged in some government record somewhere. Basically that everybody is being listened to, everybody's being metadata cataloged, collected, so to speak, in the telecommunications and internet, even online, which I think is kind of patently false and kind of overstating the mission of what the NSA does when they collect data like this. Ultimately, I don't know, it makes you feel fearful that every little thing about you is going to be known, but sometimes I wonder why people worry about it, especially if you're religious, because, I mean, God knows everything anyway, so who fucking cares if some jackass at a desk is recording your conversation? I mean, there's no secrets with God anyway, right? Okay, that's not fair. But anyway, we'll see how this plays out. I know, ultimately, I can't really say it's going to do Kentucky Republicans any favors because we have a very high concentration of Tea Party members, even up here in northern Kentucky, and we have the regular Republicans. So it's going to cause a bigger problem, ultimately, I think, come election season for both senators, ultimately. They're just going to divide apart their ranks even further, and you might end up seeing Republican moderates who don't get the candidate they want voting for us Democrats, because they do that on occasion when they just cannot stomach the type of ultra-conservative candidates that are coming out of our state. So anyway, thanks again, Senators. You made my recap a little easier by 2 birds with 1 stone, an idiotic one at that. Next, I wanted to bring up locally the Tri-County Freethinkers Association. It's an atheist group that covers the Tri-County areas of Indiana, Ohio, and northern Kentucky. They are going to be hosting a food drive for the Free Store Food Bank this Wednesday, June 3rd, 7 p.m. over at Newport on the Levee. I believe they're going to be using the conference center that's located next to the GameWorks. There's ample parking, and if you're piss poor like myself and can't afford $5 parking, they have quarter meters on the opposite side of the levee that you can get like up to 2 hours, I think, for $2. Or, the way I really like to go about it, I park over behind Hofbrauhaus area, somewhere along those blocks. There's lots of free parking as long as you stay out of the residential sections. But with it being a Wednesday night, it won't be overly busy. So there should be plenty of off-street parking if you don't mind walking a couple blocks down to the levee. That's usually what I do to save on parking costs. This is also in partnership with the Humanist Community of Central Ohio. They're all going to be convening down here, like I said, Wednesday, June 3rd, 7 p.m. I'll be there. Look forward to meeting anyone else who lives in the northern Kentucky area that might want to meet up and get to know one another, simply because there's not a lot of us in northern Kentucky. I only know about 3 or 4 people in Florence, and everyone else is in a closet. So what do I do with that? You know, sometimes you come into these groups and you hope to meet a lot of people in your area, and the majority of the time they're across the river, or they're over an hour away in Lexington, or an hour and a half away down in Louisville. So I feel kind of lonely. It gets to be a little bit of an echo chamber around here sometimes, I think. But that's what's going on this week in the local community for a great cause. I mean, it's the Free Store Food Bank. It's probably one of the better food banks we have in our area that I'm always glad to contribute to. And they don't require a prayer or faith information. They just want you to make sure you can eat, which I really appreciate. That's the whole point of donating food, is feeding people. I don't give a shit what your background is. So, good group to support. And then I want to give a shout out to Unbuckling the Bible Belt. It's a podcast that I've been introduced to over the last couple of weeks, and trying to catch up on the episodes. They've got about 25 of them, so it's almost 25 hours
worth of Showtime I've got to catch up with. They're based out of Tennessee, which is always an interesting state too. Lots of crazies up there in the Smokies that run government, no less. It's hosted by Chris, the Seethin' Heathen, Joe Kindig as well. They, I think they do 2 episodes a month, is what I'm gathering. They do have a Patreon account. But to know more about them, you can either catch up with the Seethin' Heathen himself over on Twitter at Seethin, Seethin, Heathen on Twitter again, or you can go to, unbucklingblog.wordpress.com. You can catch up on what they have there. They also have show notes with links, which is really nice because I'm one of those people, when I hear people talking about something, I'm usually Googling up what they're mentioning. So it's really cool because in their notes, they actually provide links to the articles that they're talking about, which is really cool. Very helpful, because I get tired of trying to Google it myself. So kind of nice, kind of nice. So anyway, that's all that's going on this week. I will hopefully be on time next Friday, like I plan to be with this update weekly, recap. Unfortunately, like I said with today's Patriot Act, I really want to see what happened with that because it was a late Sunday session, and it's 2 of the biggest jackasses in Congress. So, and they're from my home state. Hooray. All right, everybody. See you next week.